Hey guys, welcome to Medifaction. Today we will learn about the anatomy of fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle is one of the interconnected fluid-filled cavities within the human brain. These cavities and their content constitute the ventricular system of the brain. In order to learn more about fourth ventricle, let's start. In this video, I will be enumerating an introduction, lateral boundaries of fourth ventricle, its floor, roof, and the communication, openings in roof, angles of fourth ventricle, recesses of fourth ventricle, and some important clinical anatomy. The cavity of hindbrain is called the fourth ventricle. It is tent-shaped space, as you can see right here, and it is situated between pons and upper part of medulla oblongata in front and cerebellum behind. So it lies dorsal to pons and upper part of medulla oblongata and ventral to cerebellum. Lateral boundaries. On each side of fourth ventricle, it is bounded inferolaterally by gracile, as you can see here, and also cuneate tubercles right here, and also inferior cerebellar peduncles just lateral to it. So this is how it is bounded inferolaterally, and superiorlaterally it is bounded by superior cerebellar peduncles. This is the superior cerebellar peduncle. Flow. It is also called rhomboid fossa because of its rhomboid shape. The floor is formed by posterior surface of lower or closed part of pons and posterior surface of open or upper part of medulla oblongata. Structural layers. The floor is lined by number 1, ependyma, number 2, a thin layer of neuroglia beneath the ependyma, and number 3, a layer of gray matter forming the various nuclei deep to neuroglia. Parts. It is divisible into number 1, an upper triangular part formed by dorsal surface of pons. Number 2, a lower triangular part formed by dorsal surface of medulla. And number 3, intermediate part, which is at the junction of pons and medulla. The intermediate part is prolonged laterally over the inferior cerebellar peduncle as the floor of the lateral recess. This part is marked by transversely running fibers, which are fibers of stria medullaris. These fibers represent fibers of arcuate nucleus to the opposite cerebellum. Common features of floor. Number 1. Dorsal medial sulcus divides the floor into two symmetrical halves. Number 2. Medial eminence. One on each side of the median sulcus. The eminence is wider above and narrow below. It presents facial colliculus just opposite and medial to a depression called superior fovea. Deep to the colliculus is the genu of the facial nerve formed by the nerve looping around the abducens nucleus. Hypoglossal triangle occupies the lower narrow part of the eminence. Beneath the triangle lies hypoglossal nucleus. Number 3. A sulcus limits the medial eminence on the lateral side in the uppermost part or the pontine part. The sulcus limitance overlies an area that is bluish in color and is called locus coeruleus. So this is the sulcus limitans and this right here is the locus coeruleus. The color is due to presence of pigmented neurons which constitute substantia ferruginea. The upper part of the sulcus limitans is marked by a depression, the superior fovea which lies just lateral to facial colliculus. This right here is the facial colliculus, and just lateral to it you can appreciate the superior fovea. In the medullary part of the floor, the sulcus limitans is marked by a depression, the inferior fovea. So, right here is the inferior fovea. Descending from the fovea, there is a sulcus that runs obliquely towards midline. This sulcus divides medial eminence into two triangles. These are hypoglossal triangle medially and vagal triangle laterally. So this right here is the hypoglossal triangle and this is the vagal triangle. These overlie the hypoglossal nerve nucleus and of the vagus nerve respectively. Between the vagal triangle above and gracile tubercle below, there is a small area called the area postrama, which may function as chemoreceptor. This right here is the area postrama, and it may function as chemoreceptor. The fourth one is vestibular area. This area lies lateral to the inferior fovea or sulcus limitans, which overlies the vestibular nuclei. This right here is the vestibular area. This area is partly in pons and partly in the medulla. Roof. The roof of the ventricle is diamond shaped and can be divided into superior and inferior parts. The superior or cranial part of the roof is formed by superior cerebellar peduncles and superior medullary velum. This is the superior cerebellar peduncle. The superior cerebellar peduncle, on emerging from central white matter of cerebellum, pass firstly cranially and ventrally, forming at first lateral boundaries of ventricles. So this was the superior medullary velum which we were talking previously. On approaching the inferior colliculi, they converge and then intermingle over the ventricles and form part of the roof. The superior medullary velum fills the angular interval between the two superior cerebellar peduncles. So this is the two superior cerebellar peduncles, and here we can see the superior medullary velum fills it. The caudal inferior part of the roof is most of extent consists of an exceedingly thin sheet entirely devoid of nervous tissue and formed by the ventricular ependyma and double fault of pia mater or tela choroidea of the fourth ventricle, which covers it posteriorly. Superior to the region of inferior medullary velum on each side, the layer of tela choroidea in contact with the ependyma of caudal part of the roof reaches the inferolaterally boundary of the ventricular flow, which is marked by a narrow white ridge termed tinea. The two tinea continues below with a small curved margin, the obex, often used to denote the inferior angle itself. Communication. The activity of the fourth ventricle communicates inferiorly with the central canal and superiorly with cerebral aqueduct. Openings of the roof. The caudal part of the roof of the fourth ventricle, there are three openings, one median, two lateral. The median aperture of fourth ventricle, alternatively known as foramen of Magenti, right here, is a large opening situated caudal to nodule. This opening provides the principal communication between ventricular system, and subarachnoid space. The lateral apertures, also known as foramina of Leschka, right here, are situated at the ends of lateral recesses and are partly occupied by parts of choroid plexus which protrude into subarachnoid space. Through these, also, fourth ventricle communicates with subarachnoid space. Angles. Superior angle continues with cerebral aqueduct. Inferior angle continuous below with central canal of spinal cord. Lateral angle, one on each side towards the inferior cerebellar peduncles. Recesses of fourth ventricle. These are extensions of the main cavity of ventricle. 5 recesses have been identified. Number 1. 2 lateral recesses, one on each side. These are the lateral recesses. Each lateral recess passes laterally in the interval between the inferior cerebellar peduncle ventrally and the peduncle of flocculus dorsally, reaching as far as the medial part of the flocculus. Number 2. One recess present in the median plane known as median dorsal recess, right here. It extends dorsally into wide core of cerebellum and lies cranial to nodule. Number 3 is 2 lateral dorsal recesses, right here and this one on each side. Each lateral dorsal recess extends dorsally lateral to the nodule and cranial to the inferior medullary velum. Clinical anatomy. Number 1. Vital centers are situated in the vicinity of vagal triangle. An injury to this area therefore would prove fatal. Number 2. Infratentorial brain tumors block the foramina of Leschka and Magendie situated in the roof of fourth ventricle. This results in marked early rise of intracranial pressure which causes headache, vomiting, papilloedema, etc. Hope you have understood the video. Like, subscribe and press the bell button for more videos. Thank you. Thanks for watching.